What are the best scenes from Deadpool 1, 2, and Deadpool Wolverine? We are going to find out today on the panel where we look at the world through the frame of the comic book. My name is Jason Badower. I'm a comic book artist and writer. I'm currently working on Joker Harley Criminal Sanity Volume 2. You can also find my work on all the Lego and dolls for Wicked. Did all these paintings down here. So when you go through Target or Walmart or wherever you're at and you see these toys, you'll be like, I know the guy that did that. I also want to introduce my buddy today, Scott Stuart, who owns every issue of the Avengers as well as almost every issue of Iron Man. He's my very own
thirsty little honey badger.
Him and I are going to go back and forth and figure out what we think are the best scenes from Deadpool 1, 2, and Wolverine. We'd love to hear what you think below. But right now, as they say,
let's go.
Scott, what will be your favorite scene from Deadpool?
The Calendar Girl montage. The perfect little happy pop song to tell a whole bunch of quick skitty jokes. The pacing works really well. The joke doesn't get old. The variations are surprising and entertaining. It conveys an enormous amount of character and is largely responsible for us believing the relationship and the stakes both characters have in it that carries through the rest of not just the film, but the trilogy.
Ryan Reynolds said they spent more time shooting those Calendar Girl scenes, and they did for most of the action scenes. Was it clever enough? Was it smart enough? How do we stage it to get the right tone? I think the whole meeting Vanessa is my favorite scene in the movie, and I am talking right from where he meets her in the bar to the Calendar Girl scene. I believed their relationship. I wanted to be a part of their relationship. I was quite happy to just be a fly on the wall and listen to those two banter.
I slept in a dishwasher box.
You had a dishwasher.
That to me has just so rarely been done, because you get people together and that's the end of your movie, right? Or the end of your TV show. Nobody knows how to write this stuff. And I just felt like Deadpool 1 crushed it. I loved the relationship with Vanessa. I loved all of it. Morena Baccarin and Ryan Reynolds killed it.
It didn't just carry a movie, it carried a trilogy.
My second favorite scene is when Deadpool meets Negasonic Teenage Warhead.
Long sullen silence or mean comment? Go on.
You got me in a box here.
I think when those two characters get together, the chemistry that drives her through the next two movies is never met again. When you just have so many supporting characters in this movie crushing it, hats off to what they did with Negasonic.
Even though it's heightened reality, the verisimilitude of it, the human truth of it shines through. It's one of the reasons this film is rightly beloved and very successful.
So my actual total worst scene in the movie, I love the supporting characters in the movie. Vanessa, Dopinder, Negasonic, Colossus, they are all just top tier characters. I think Deadpool has the best supporting cast ever. I just don't think TJ Miller really tried to bring anything unique or creative to the role. I just found every scene in St. Margaret's with him to be so boring.
I think that's fair. I don't think we're doing a disservice to the movies or to TJ Miller by largely skipping his legacy in this movie. His one-note performance was good enough for one or two viewings of the film. But now that we've seen it as often as we have and really picked it apart, his weaknesses really shine through.
The hate is swelling in you now.
We're going to do the feedback sandwich. Worst scenes of Deadpool 2 before we get to the best scenes of Deadpool 2. I think Fire Fist is one of the weakest things in the film, and one of the reasons why I find that is because it gets off to a really bad start. Where we meet Fire Fist is just so poorly staged. I think David Leitch, who's such a great action director, created a scene that to me was just so flat and uninteresting.
I agree 100%. This was going to be my nomination for the worst scene. It didn't have that sense of genuine menace. It was definitely crafted to do that. Threatening children, drab institution, but something in the execution just, it fell and it rang hollow. The performances weren't up to snuff, and it really undercut the rest of the movie by not delivering that menace and tension that Fire Fist's whole rebellion depends on.
You really need to immediately see that these people are bad, and in a way that is incontrovertible, such that Colossus has to stop Deadpool, but knows that in doing so, he's protecting people that do need to be punished. David Leitch is such an accomplished, smart guy. I know that if he had to do it again, it would be 20 times better. Before we get into effusive praise of Deadpool 2, can I go for what I believe is the worst scene of Deadpool 2?
All right, ruin this film even more.
The shirt scene. The shirt baby male genitalia scene. It is so long. It is 8 minutes long, and it drags every goddamn second because there is no drama. There is no conflict. It is so tiring as we go through everybody's reaction to Wade's lower half. The whole scene is just trying so hard. Everybody is just trying to be funny. I don't understand why Cable's there. I don't understand why anybody's there.
I find the very concept of Donald ducking it to be hilarious.
Donald ducking it. I love it. Well done. When he had the tweezers out, why aren't his legs scarred? Like, when did the scars form? Or does he have perfectly normal legs now? You just have to chop it off. And is there a set of legs out there that have grown another Wade Wilson on top?
I think that's a good way to create an X-24 type antagonist for him.
Oh, yeah. A Ben Reilly Deadpool.
And because it's basically grown from his ass, there's implicit humor there. I think we're on to something. I think this is a genuinely solid Deadpool 4 pitch.
Right? Remember you saw the baby legs and it didn't have any scars on it? Ryan Reynolds grows back perfectly formed with just scarred lower from the waist down.
Evil Deadpool would have to be classically handsome, yes.
Let's talk about the best scenes of Deadpool 2.
The prison transport scene. It begins when it is just Deadpool, Cable, and Domino fighting on the prison transport. Whereas they saved the best action scene in Deadpool 1 for the end. They put their best action scene smack bang in the middle in Deadpool 2. The smile on my face from the moment X-Force leap out of the back of that plane right up until Domino lands on the giant inflatable panda thing. Just pure superhero joy. Powers, character, amazing action direction. David Leitch, take a bow, sir. This is a bravura performance. So
100% agree. Cable, whatever. Deadpool, whatever. Every moment of Domino on that screen is absolute gold for me. One of the most jaw-dropping displays of superpowers that I've seen in movies to create one of the best spectacles I've ever seen. Loved it. Then we cap it off with the reveal of the Juggernaut. The fact that we just got served filet mignon, and then you get this Juggernaut as a dessert just blew my mind. He was the actual comic book Juggernaut. I was so happy. As a piece of trivia, that is Ryan Reynolds voicing the Juggernaut in probably one of his best voice acting roles. What do you think are the best Deadpool scenes in Deadpool and Wolverine?
I think it's actually a very easy question to answer. Going through the film from this point of view, it became very obvious that it's Wolverine's movie. So while there's a lot of competition for the best Wolverine scene, there's really only a handful of scenes that are really Deadpool's to steal.
the best Deadpool scene, I think, is the Happy Hogan scene. It sets the themes of the movie in place. It's a very subtle and nuanced performance from Ryan. There's a bit of humor and sadness, and it sets up the themes of the movie. Can I choose my legacy? What does it take to be a hero?
And care about something bigger than yourself. There is an Australian term, and it is calling someone a wanker. And to wank basically means to play with yourself. And I am going to give you the wankiest interpretation of the opening Wolverine Adamantium skeleton fight. He's literally dismantling the narrative bones of what came before to attack what's new, the TVA, the new part of Marvel. There is nothing more Deadpool than that. Meanwhile, you've got a banging soundtrack that I've listened to now several hundred times thanks to my daughter.
It's very strong. It's very Deadpool-centric. It's a lot of fun. And, yeah, establishes themes very quickly. You know, exhuming the past, and how does that past travel forward with us?
So my actual favorite scene of the movie is, we've already spoken about how much I did not like what we called the Donald ducking or the shirt scene from Deadpool 2. I believe the scene where he meets the Resistance, Blade, Gambit, X-23, and Elektra is my favorite Deadpool scene. The shirt scene goes for 8 minutes. This goes for 7.5 minutes. It is that same scene done right. It's Deadpool with a bunch of supporting characters in a room, but in this case, there is so much drama there. Could the staging be done better? Sure. but it's all those people in one room. The jokes are steamrolling. The Donald Duck scene was everybody trying to be funny, whereas here everybody's just trying to be themselves. Deadpool also shepherding these characters with a level of respect, but also with light ribbing is very Deadpool. And in the same way that we saw the Juggernaut enter Deadpool 2 and suddenly raise the stakes, and Cable realized that he has to team up with everybody else to go take out the Juggernaut. Deadpool also has a goal where he's trying to unite everybody to take down Cassandra Nova, motivate them in a way that he has never really done before. But we also have Johnny Storm's death hanging over Deadpool the entire scene, so it has this level of drama, wondering the entire time when that's going to come out. I think it's just very Deadpool-y. Plot, third wall breaking, it's funny, and all the characters in one room being awesome.
Definitely dialed up all the characters to 11 and had a lot of heavy lifting to do in terms of introducing a possibly cold audience to a disparate array of strong personalities. The cast brought their A game. They certainly looked like they were having fun on set that day.
Stick with us as we are far from done today. That's just the preamble before Scott and I dive into the deepest dive of Deadpool 2. But you know what also needs a reboot? That freaking like button. That needy little bugger requires constant attention to keep my channel above water. Please just tap the screen or grab the mouse and hit that little thumbs up. I can't tell you enough how important that is to me. It directly helps the success of these videos. And if you just like hanging out in the Scott and Jace Not So Cinematic universe, please pull up a chair and hit that subscribe button. Just last night, we crossed over 100,000 subscribers. Believe that number. That's 100,000 people who dig the Scott and Jace Not So Cinematic universe. We're doing this as regularly as I can while I still draw pages for Joker Harley Criminal Insanity Volume 2, the sequel to my Bram Stoker nominated graphic novel. If you can grab Joker Harley Criminal Insanity from your local comic shop, that would be amazing. You'd be supporting a small local business and directly helping the comics industry. If you can't or you don't have one nearby, it's some nice reviews on Big Brother Bezos' Amazon.com. You can also read my free comic, The Last Sun, at jasonbadower.com. If you feel like keeping me company each week while I draw The Last Sun live, head to twitch.tv/jasonbadower. It'd be fantastic to see you there. If you want a monthly digital sketch from me, come join my Patreon at patreon.com/jasonbadower and also score yourself access on my Discord. But we are far from done. I have another conversation with Scott and I. Please enjoy our conversation on Deadpool 2.
Let's go.
Spoilers for today. Massive spoilers. For some reason, if you have not seen Deadpool 2 and you do want to go see it, now's the time to just go find one of our other videos for a movie that you actually have seen. So Deadpool 2, what did you think, man?
Depending which rating service you like, IMDb has it ranked a bit below Deadpool 1. Metacritic has it ranked a bit above. And I'm on Team Metacritic. I think Deadpool 2 is one of the better sequels I've seen for quite some time.
I think it's an absolute sophomore album. Like, you usually get your debut album, which is pretty much the life work of an artist. Rhett Reese, Paul Warwick, and Ryan Reynolds were all working their butts off for anywhere up to 6 to 10 years on Deadpool 1, and I thought they just crushed it. Deadpool 2, I thought was absolutely fine with an absolutely fantastic landing. I really felt like that first one was a fresh, brilliant, and different take on the genre of superheroes while also critiquing the genre of superheroes. Whereas I feel like this one is just such a superhero film from start to finish while trying to critique superhero films. I just feel like if you want to throw punches, you got to be really bringing something special to the party than just, as Cable says, being an annoying clown dressed as a sex toy. And while the density of humor in the second one is fantastic, I found myself chuckling constantly. I didn't feel it had anywhere near the sheer freshness that the first one had for me.
I actually applaud them for not hoeing so close to the first one that it rings as a hollow redo of the same ideas. They raised the emotional stakes more than they raised the superhero stakes, although they did that too.
I missed the sordid sexuality of the first film. I loved how dirty and gritty Wade's world was. I missed that raunchiness.
I agree that the raunchiness is missing. I thought the change in tone was appropriate for the journey that Wade was on. This wasn't finding love and the thrill of romance. This was starting a family and losing a family. And a bunch of extraneous sex jokes I don't think would have added anything. And we'd done that.
I just thought it was part of Wade's world of living in strip clubs and dirty bars with hitmen and bikers. What would Deadpool think of his own movie? I think he'd love the first one. I think he'd tear the second one a new asshole.
Possibly, because it's very much more of a Wade Wilson movie. Some of what we loved about the first one was the character that they gave Wade and the character that Ryan was able to bring to the screen. And we get a lot more of that in this one. A lot less Deadpool under the mask and more Wade Wilson being a human.
We've had a switch of director in this second one.
The story I read was that Ryan had more creative control than Tim was happy to see during the production.
Tim Miller was like, I want to have final say on my movie. If I'm going to have the role of director, and not wanting to wrangle with Ryan Reynolds over every little thing, I completely understand why he would leave under those circumstances. Could you imagine Ridley Scott or David Fincher ceding that level of control to one of their actors? It would just never happen.
It does seem unlikely, and it's not a position that a lot of directors are put in, especially ones coming off a film that made more money than The Man Who Invented Pants.
So David Leitch is the director of Bullet Train. How did you find the difference between Miller and Leitch?
No offense to Tim Miller. He certainly had much less budget to work with, and he was a very creative guy, but I think Leitch was able to surpass him here. Because Leitch came up through stunt work to become a director, the action scenes really take a step up in Deadpool 2. And part of that is a function of the increased budget that the enormous success of the first one afforded them. I think it's at least equal parts down to David Leitch's more innate understanding of the physical mechanics of that aspect of filmmaking. I really enjoyed his turn here. And I think Leitch has gone on to do really interesting and creative work in action cinema since he and Chad Stahelski made their names as directors with John Wick.
I think Tim Miller brought to the party was some really high-level ideas that were so genre-defining and different. And I don't just mean the action either. So much of the visual storytelling, the montages from the Zamboni to all the different ways the Deadpool was killing people in the first one compared to the montages in this one were fine. I found so many parallels to the first film. You had the mini-film within a film at the start, but like now that you're all caught up, you had the same sort of vehicle heist, but taken to another level with the trucks rather than the cars. You had something going through Deadpool's head at the end of the movie and him having a hallucinatory experience. Like there are a lot of very similar beats to the first movie. Were David Leitch's ones shot better? Probably, but was the ensemble concept as a whole much better that Tim Miller brought to the party? Yeah, absolutely.
It also had the advantage of being able to iterate on the much more original ideas that Miller brought to the first Dead. Necessity being the mother of invention, they had to be a bit more creative with how things were shot and staged. And I'm not convinced Leitch would have done as well as Miller did if their roles were reversed, for example. But yeah, they're different dudes with different strengths and brought different things to the party. And I don't think either of them are slouches in the areas where the other excels.
David Leitch has definitely become one of those guys that if his name is on a film, I'll absolutely watch it now. He's won me over between Deadpool 2 and Bullet Train. One of the things that you said that I wanted to ask how you felt about now, you said they imbue Wade with goals and desires, an underlying personality and a connection to the world in which he lives. And he's not just Bugs Bunny hopping through and blocking Elmer Fudd's gun with his two fingers. How does that hold up in this film?
Just as well, if not better. He doesn't have the same linear carrot in front of him goal that he does through the first movie. He has to struggle to find his goal in the wake of loss, but that add levels of character and emotional truth to the movie that I rate them fairly equally on that level.
I just didn't find it as emotional as the first one. One of the things that I've always said that Wade really struggles with is by not having a goal. And they gave him the best goal with Vanessa in the first movie. And sure, there's a bunch of tropes where she's always the damsel in distress and being kidnapped and rescuing her. But just her presence is so much more interesting in Wade's life. And once she left, I felt all of Wade Wilson got sucked out of the movie and we're just left with Deadpool. Like even when he's mourning, I didn't feel that it was Wade mourning. He was mourning in the way that Deadpool would mourn. And that just could be a manifestation of his trauma, that he's just that messed up and that's who he is now. I just thought smashing the bag of coke into his mask, I just don't feel like Wade Wilson pre the incident would do. I just feel like he puts on the mask and he becomes a completely different character. And maybe that's part of the mythos of Deadpool.
I think Cable explicitly says that at one point. He filters his trauma through humor. I think that's fairly standard psychological behavior. We all wear masks of one kind or another to present an aspect of ourselves to the world that we'd rather present than at least the full truth, if not any truth at all.
The underlying question is Deadpool is part of the superhero genre, but I don't know if he's a superhero. Is he? Isn't he? What do you think?
I don't think he's a superhero, no. You could argue anti-hero in the way that Venom or the Punisher is, but a superhero in the way that Captain America or Spider-Man are, no.
Is that because he kills people? What is it that makes him an anti-hero and yet still part of the superhero genre?
The superhero genre has always been a genre that sits on top of other genres. Its foundations come from pulp traditions and sci-fi serials, and the Marvel universe was built around taking different genres, putting a superhero in the middle and packaging it up as all being related. He fits into the world because he has superpowers. He fits into the world because his purpose is to reflect and comment on the X-Men in particular. I'd suggest that no matter how trademarks work, superhero isn't really one word. It's two words. There's super and there's hero. And you get to be in the genre by reflecting only one aspect of that. Venom. Super. Hard to call him a hero, even though they frame him that way a lot in the books. Bucky, before Winter Soldierization, is absolutely a hero without being very super. And because it's a genre that sits on top of other genres, it makes it easier to choose which of those two parts of the superhero you're going to focus on, and gives us a wider range of stories.
There was something also you said last time that I just absolutely love, and that was by being above the material, you don't get to be a part of it. And I think I really like Deadpool 1 because he's not a part of the material. Whereas in this, I really feel like it's his journey to becoming a superhero and becoming part of the genre in some way and learning not to kill. Vanessa even says your heart isn't in the right place, but I think perhaps his journey is to learn to become a hero.
My read on the heart in the right place thing was that he needed his heart to be in a right position physically to take the bullet for Rusty. His heart needed to be in that place for him to heroically help this child get on the right path. I'm going to keep calling him Rusty, but in the movie, he's Russell.
That's a really good read, both physically and literally. There is some really strong writing in this. I found myself laughing more than I did in Deadpool 1, but I also found myself really uninvested in most of the struggle. I just feel like the best thing that they added to Deadpool was Vanessa. She grounded him, and then by losing Vanessa, gave me nothing to invest in with him. Once Vanessa left the movie, I really felt like they'd literally taken the heart out of the movie. That relationship was the most interesting thing that I'd ever seen done to Deadpool in years.
I think they replaced Deadpool with Russell, and that was the relationship that defined the journey and gave Deadpool the reason to heal and try to be a better person. That is set up by Vanessa in the opening scenes. We can get into whether or not it was the right choice to fridge her. For those who don't know, fridging is a popular term for killing the love interest or the female character to provide a male character with motivation and stakes for a plot.
I believe the term was created by Gail Simone in reaction to when Green Lantern came home and found his girlfriend killed and I think chopped up and put in his fridge. And it has pretty much become a trope since. And it's been one of those things that media does a lot, but it's also one of those things that media doesn't like protagonists in relationships, especially male protagonists. I don't want to see her become copycat. In the Marvel comic book, she pretty much has mystique powers. I don't think she needs to become a superhero. Deadpool doesn't need someone in the chair. What he does need is someone in his ear giving him emotional advice. I think it'd be very funny to have her still working as a cocktail waitress at a strip bar while giving Deadpool emotional advice on his missions. And it'd just be really funny for him to take the earpiece out and just be like, hey man, my wife wants to talk to you. And just
Look, I admit that would be a good bit. I disagree that wasn't her role in this movie. It was a smaller role than she had in the first one, but it still absolutely was her role to nudge him along in the right emotional directions.
How'd you find Dopinder in the film?
I enjoyed him having an actual character arc and being present. Their chemistry in the first one was a real highlight and brought me, and I think a lot of the audience, on side fairly quickly in the opening sequence of the first one. To see him step out of his comfort zone and into the world of contract assassins, it was really good. I thought he brought a lot to the role. It was fitting that he got a triumphant moment to wrap the film up. Dude's a very talented and charismatic actor. I thought he did a great job.
He's very talented, and they obviously knew they had a huge breakout star and character with Dopinder. One of the things that I found that first movie, I just found it was so tight and so dense. This one didn't have that level of density, and for me, Dopinder was one of those things that he was fun. The guy's on screen, I'm happy, but I'd really love to see more for Dopinder. I think there is just untapped potential for the character. I don't know what that is. What's your take on Blind Owl?
Another example of the amazing casting that Miller and the casting team from the first film did. She is so well realized in so few minutes of screen time. It's a shame that she was reduced in this one, but again, it's a different film focused on different things. I'm glad they found a role for her. I'm disappointed she didn't find the cure for blindness near the cocaine that waited hidden in the apartment.
Right next to a whoopee cushion that gives you an idea of its sense of humor when living with a blind housemate. My goodness.
I was going to compare her to Professor Xavier in this movie. And she fulfilled the sort of role that Xavier does often in the comics for the X-Men. The wise leader that they go to for advice, who puts things into perspective and then sends them out into the world to resolve their issues on their own. And the blindness rather than the paraplegia, I thought that was the analogy that occurred to me.
I think you're talking about the Professor Xavier from the movies. The Professor Xavier from the comics would probably create some sort of psychic trap in your brain when you decide to actually confront the bad guy by yourself for the first time to teach you something, because that's what Professor Xavier would always do in the goddamn comics. He was just the worst. The X-Men always needed t-shirts where it's just, I survived Xavier's school for the gifted. It is ridiculous. And then most of them didn't. They died a lot too. So I put that at Professor Xavier's feet also.
It wasn't the lack of name X-Men that always stood out to me about the Empty Mansion. It was the lack of kids running around because it's a school. And a boarding school. Unless Deadpool only ever rocks up to see Colossus in the summer, that's the omission rather than a Halle Berry cameo or something.
You've absolutely hit it. My favorite character, possibly your favorite character too, Colossus turns up and puts him in a bag.
I enjoyed Colossus coming out of his shell and learning as much from Wade as Wade learnt from him, in a way. The only thing that I bounce off as a comics fan is that Peter doesn't spend a lot of time bumming around the mansion in his Colossus form. He only dons that for battle, but I guess that's part of the bit.
I loved Colossus in the first movie, and I think I loved him even more in this movie. I feel if any character got a chance to scrape deeper as well as Wade, it was absolutely Colossus. I love this in how pure he was and how intent he was. I love him reading out the rule book where it's just like, no killing, and then label everything in the refrigerator like that's the next most important thing. After no killing. I don't know if that's the X rulebook or if that's Colossus's version of the X rulebook. I just couldn't help but admire this guy. They just won't ever give up on his friend. And I just love that no matter how much his friend had violated his trust and everything that he holds dear and lives and breathes every single day. And yet he still turns up to help him at the end. And there's that line he says with Wade, this is what friends do. They show up even when it's hard. Like they show up. Like you do for me, man. You're my Colossus. You always turn up, dude.
Unlike Deadpool, you've never broken my heart, so it's not hard to turn up for you. Even Colossus got an emotional beat and a little arc. He had to overcome Wade's betrayal over the X-Men ideals, but he did. And he continued to show up for his friend. It's exactly who Peter Rasputin is. I thought the visual of a giant dude made out of steel, like rolling over on his bed, being sad when he turns up and does the boombox thing was a nice, subtle bit of really good comedy.
And the animators in this film, all the different teams and companies taking care of all the different bits of this movie, I know they probably got worked into the ground. I hope they were able to have some fun while they were doing it, at least for a little bit, because there is some real genuine animated humor on those screens. I think, and Colossus is absolutely one of those examples. As a longtime X-Men fan, seeing Colossus just done like that is one of my favorite page-to-screen adaptations of a character, despite the fact that he's going to hell, Swamp Mouth. So it's really good.
But again, even that sort of illustrates the lengths he will go to for his friends.
Also at the mansion, Negasonic Teenage Warhead and Yukio. How'd you go with those guys?
Found Wade's relationship with Yukio very endearing, and yeah, absolutely loved the pairing. Brianna Hildebrandt, totally underrated performances in both movies. The subtle awkwardness of admitting she's in a relationship to this dude she doesn't like and being judged on that level and being seen on that level. It's once again a very teenage reality.
I love that. Pump the brakes, Fox and Friends. I just don't understand how anyone could be in a relationship with you. There's some great stuff. I love the stuff with Yukio. I thought she was just such a great addition. I don't know if she's supposed to be an adaptation of the Wolverine ninja from his 1982 miniseries, but if she's an original character, she's tons of fun. I did feel that her relationship with Wade overshadowed his relationship with Negasonic Teenage Warhead. I would love to have seen a little bit more of that fire going back and forth. I think Teenage Negasonic Warhead is just so much fun in that first film and just fine here. Again, not because of Brianna Hildebrandt's fault. I think she did a great job. I just think the material that she was given, she got overshadowed in the edit to create an ongoing gag. The more I think about it, the more thing I loved about the first film was the relationships that Wade had with everybody. When I talk about the world feeling more shallow, I felt like all these wonderful relationships that he had in the first film with Dopinder, with Negasonic Teenage Warhead, with Blind Owl, all got moved sideways and down a little bit. I put Vanessa in that category too.
I think you're absolutely correct, and that is what happened. I just don't have an issue with it.
You know who could have done it? Chris Claremont. He could have done it. You could put 20 more people in this film, and all of them would have had character arcs, and all of them would have had moments, as well as highlights in a fight scene. Chris Claremont could have done it. Just saying.
Nope, I absolutely disagree, because half of the runtime would be given over to the narrator. Quickly
acknowledging my comic book roots, because I never do this while we are recording, but hey, everybody, check out Joker Harley, Criminal Sanity, and Artemis. And if you are still with us for some godforsaken reason that none of us can explain, if you could hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep doing this. Scott, you want to shamelessly plug us?
Don't like the video, don't subscribe. I can't believe you're still watching at this point. What the hell are you doing? Go outside, touch grass.
Plant a tree, just pat a dog, put the comic book down, and just go that giant ball in the sky, as Deadpool says, don't look directly at it, but go enjoy the warmth that it will bring you.
And if you want to see more videos with Just Jace, say so in the comments down below. He reads them. I never ever will.
Yes, you could just write comments below and I'll relay them to Scott like some sort of raven from Game of Thrones. That's pretty much what I'm relegated to. There's a message from the wall, Master Scott.
There's a reason there are none of my socials down here and just some joke about my beer or sense of humor.
And there we run into Julian Dennison, or as Thor would call him, Julian, son of Dennis. What do you think of Fire Fist in this movie?
We've spent enough time on these over the last few weeks making fun of Canadians. Stand by, New Zealand.
For those of you who don't know, New Zealand is basically Australia's Canada.
And let me preface any jokes I may make about sheep and so forth over the next half hour with the fact that I'm drinking a New Zealand beer that I love dearly.
There we go. There we go. He taketh and he giveth. Have you seen Hunt for the Wilder People, Taika Waititi's film?
Yes. Amazing movie. Amazing movie. I am absolutely surprised that it got a lot of play in America because it is such a New Zealand movie. The thick accents, the characters. It's a great movie. And if anybody hasn't seen it and is even vaguely a Thor Ragnarok fan, you really owe it to yourself.
Julian Dennison is in Hunt for the Wilder People. He's the star next to Sam Neill and he rocks it so hard. He is so good in that movie.
I thought he was pretty good in this one too. Brought a lot of weight and reality. What could have been a pretty one-note character prison pocket aside.
I think it was 15 when he did this. And I just feel that at some point during the process or production or his choices or the director's choices or somewhere along the line, his performance didn't quite get me over the line. There were a couple points where it was really good, but for the most part, I didn't feel the pain. I didn't feel the anger. One of those things that this movie did give me is a real renewed respect for Ryan Reynolds. I'd seen this movie before, but his sort of contribution to it really washed off on me. And going back and watching these movies again really made me appreciate this dude can really act when he has to. When you see Wade's trauma and his change and his fury and his anger in the first film and feel his guilt and his perfect timing at that ending. And then when you transpose that similar sort of traumatic journey onto this kid, I didn't feel that same pain. Julian Dennison is very good at a whole bunch of things, and I think he could do it. I just think somewhere along the way, it just didn't quite close the circle for me.
His scene where he meets Deadpool shows a lot of rage and pain, and the climax of the film shows a lot of rage and pain, but I can definitely see where you're coming from, where it is perhaps a little underplaying it through the middle of the film.
I have not done many nitpicks of this movie so far. I'm about to drop my first and biggest one. After Deadpool shoots Jared Kushner, how on earth does he miss the headmaster? This is a guy that can flip in midair and nail 3 guys through the head with a single bullet. Stationary, elderly gentleman, feet/meters away.
Yeah, look, I see where you're coming from. It's one of those things where the rest of the movie needs to happen, but that is nowhere near as much of a... How did that work for me as all of the timey-wimey stuff that the conclusion is wrapped up in?
Oh my God, we're gonna try and unpack that can of worms later. My God.
Do we have to?
They all get arrested, they get the collars put on, and then they go to the icebox. And we get to meet an actual comic book character, Black Tom Cassidy. Want to go into Black Tom?
No.
No, there's not much to...
He hangs out with the Juggernaut. He's also a relation of Charles Xavier somewhere along the line.
Oh, I remember. He is Banshee's brother or cousin or something.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Sean Cassidy, Black Tom Cassidy. Yes. There we go.
He's part of the generation of the X-Men that Claremont largely left behind when he took over the book.
I've read a couple of Black Tom comics, but I really have to say that his absolute highlight is in this film. There's an ongoing racial joke. I just laughed so hard every time Deadpool was giving Cable crap for being racist.
And good on the filmmakers for making Cable just exasperated, but like unable to rebut it. It's one of those things you can't... I'm not a racist. That's exactly what a racist would say.
All right, Cable.
Cable in the movie, apart from having a family when he time travels, is a pretty literal translation. He's not expressly telekinetic, but he does move his gun and various things. He's got future tech built into himself, which isn't really given an origin in the movie, but in the comics comes because he was afflicted by the techno-organic virus. And he liked Cable in this movie more than I've ever liked Cable in any comic he's ever appeared in.
Fair. That's not a high bar.
Plus, Josh Brolin's actually generally pretty good in things.
My problem was I just found Cable, almost every scene he was in, so goddamn boring. It was just a guy with some cybernetic stuff and a big gun. I thought the way he fought was boring. I thought his weapons were boring. You could have done so much more fun stuff with that gun.
It had a dial that went to 11. Shout out Spinal Tap. For me, Cable was the most accurate comics character to screen translation ever, precisely for all the things you said were bad. He's boring, he's got guns, he's got too many pouches.
I talk about good superheroes do things in interesting ways. I was watching him in that scene and I'm like, you're not doing anything interesting in any way, shape or form.
I honestly think Cable's limitations were deliberate and part of that joke. Cable, a bad generic character with huge limitations as a fictional device. We did all the Rob Liefeld bashing. I'm not going to get back into that again. If you think Deadpool is a triumphant creation, Cable's just a dude. And that's all he ever is. That's all he ever can be in the framework of how the character was created. Now, you can tell a good story with a bad character. You can add layers and things like that. They tried to do that a little bit here to give him a bit more soul.
Learning Cable's background is like trying to summarize Days of Our Lives with plasma weapons and telekinesis. I have zero interest in that kerfuffle.
Look, there's a reason we both have Deadpool shirts and nobody on Earth has a Cable shirt.
I told you that guy behind me in the line at shopping had a Cable t-shirt on. I was just like, why Cable, dude? Why would you pick Cable? He didn't even look like a homeless person. Let's get to one of the highlights of the movie for me, X-Force, where he decides he needs a team to get Fire Fist out of the prison transport. My favorite is when it opens with the audition and it's looking at a photo of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and they're like, I hear she can rap also. And it's like, oh, that's interesting.
I wonder what her mutant power is.
But it's
clearly not a healing factor.
Dark, dude.
Oh, it's almost as if that came from the DC universe.
Look, all of it was just so much fun. We get probably my favorite character of the movie, and that is the lady behind you, Domino. I think Domino is a vague adaptation of the character in the comics, but just done so well.
Zazie Beetz brought all the energy. She's pretty close to the basic template of the comic character. Luck powers, an assassin. She's introduced as Cable's girlfriend, basically. Technically, and here's a bit of comic nerdery for you. The Domino we meet when we meet Cable is actually Vanessa, aka Copycat, pretending to be Domino.
Deep cut. My God, I can't believe you remember that. That is hardcore, dude. I thought everything where she was in hit the level of Deadpool 1. She was like fighting a Rube Goldberg machine. This falls on this, that knocks this, that takes out this. While I was looking at the truck heist, apart from the bit where Deadpool cuts the bullet and then doesn't cut any of the other bullets, which I thought was very funny, the rest of the Cable Deadpool fight was boring. But everything that she was doing was so funny and so much fun and so joyous. I really just loved every second that Domino was on the screen.
Domino has luck powers in the comics, and I don't think they've ever been used as effectively as they were in this movie. And the scene in the climax where she dismembers all the orderlies because things fall in the right direction or they hit each other, and then says, I might need a bus to get all of you out here. And then a bus flies through the wall. It just brilliantly conceived and executed.
I felt she completely overshadowed every other part of the film, because that fight with the orderlies that she has is one of my favorite fights of the movie. You contrast that with Cable and Deadpool fighting back to back against a whole bunch of other orderlies. And when you hold up a solidly constructed action scene next to the genius of what they were doing with Domino, it really fell flat.
I was really geared up and excited where Deadpool asked Cable, oh, can I have one of those guns? And he says, nope. All right, I'll use this brick. And then we got minimum effort out of the execution of that scene, especially compared to the maximum effort they put into the sequence of events where all these wireframe things in a row fall onto a guy and pin him to a bed. I thought, well, that's a bit weird. He'll get up in a second. And then the steel cabinet falls off the wall and beheads him. It's absolute beautiful setup and payoff. Whether this movie holds together as a quote-unquote perfectly formed narrative as much as the first is ultimately less important to me than the amount of fun I was having throughout the entire runtime of this movie. And that was basically the culmination of the fun in the movie.
I completely forgot that Deadpool was like, I have this brick. And there could have been some absolutely hilarious choreography with that brick. And I would have shot the fight scene from the perspective of the brick. Just put the camera on the brick and you have the fight scene as it's smashing into people and being flipped around. It could have been really impossible to choreograph, but that's the sort of thing that I expect from a Deadpool movie. And it took Domino to give it to me, not Deadpool. And that was one of those things that just broke my little heart. But then what also completely reinvigorated me was one of my other highlights of the film, and that was the Juggernaut. My godfather, dude. I never thought I'd see Kane Marco like that on the screen.
If in the unlikely event that Vinnie Jones ever sees this video, I would like him to know from the bottom of my heart, that is the Juggernaut. I don't know what you were doing in that awful movie we're pretending doesn't exist. This was the Juggernaut. And he was awesome. The fight with Colossus had weight, which is really hard to do in a almost completely CGI creation. I was doing a bit of reading in prep for the stream that he was played by Ryan Reynolds. Ryan did mocap and the voice, and boom, mind blown.
Possibly
It's,
my favorite Ryan Reynolds role, actually.
You sure it's not Blade Trinity?
He lists up for a bunch of comics. Uncanny X-Men 1, 411, X-Men Unlimited 12.
I have
Oh.
Thor 411. Here's where I put it.
Oh my
Yep.
God. That is a great cover. Do you know who did that cover?
I do. Ron Friends, longtime Thor artist. Tom DeFalco, longtime Thor writer. Inked by the great Joe Sennett. Iconic Thor cover. I would have listed Amazing Spider-Man 230, which has that amazing sort of black and white Juggernaut and Spidey in front of him. The only other one I picked up was X-Force 3, which hopefully you got my lovely photograph of and will give the audience a better view. It's got X-Force, it's got the Juggernaut, it's got awful Cable and all his pouches, it's got goofy Shatterstar and his silly red ponytail, and there's even Domino down here in the bottom corner. It's very movie relevant. It doesn't have Deadpool, but it does have Spider-Man. As we discussed last time, Deadpool was at least partly inspired by Spider-Man.
Wasn't that a two-parter with Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man?
You're on the money. To be continued in Spider-Man 16.
How's that for a memory? My goodness.
If you want a good era of X-Force, the mid-2010s had a Rick Remender written run that had Deadpool and Cable in it. About as good as X-Force has ever been.
Which takes us nicely to the end of the movie, because Wade is pretty much wearing that costume, the green X-Force costume from the Remender run at the end of the film. But yeah, all the Marvel references, funny, zip at Thanos, hey big guy, sun's getting real low. This is all stuff that I didn't get the first time around because I wasn't as deep into the material. But these references, obviously, to Thanos and to Hulk and Ultron.
He's
are just
dying of cancer in a prison, and he says, if I had a bow and arrow, I'd be Hawkeye. The fact that this Deadpool got to comment on the wider superhero milieu was a lot of fun. Throwaway gags for the fans, the rapid fire zinger school, where if it doesn't land, you're telling the next one the next second anyway, so it really doesn't matter.
I think, again, too, why this movie interests me less is because it is not trying to be that brutal critique of superheroes or revisionist critique that I felt that the first one was very subversive, almost similar to something like Kick-Ass in its tone and where it came from. Whereas this second one is very much just a superhero movie with a great stand-up comedy soundtrack that goes along with it. I was mildly entertained for most of it and really enjoyed that ending. The culmination of Reynolds' talent, just delivery off the chart. The editors and the writers just doing such a stunning job on that scene. I've watched it 3 times now and I cannot figure out why it works so well.
We somehow can't stop being on opposite sides here. The overlong Deadpool death scene was one of the comedy bits that didn't land for me. The joke was so obvious and telegraphed by the lingering of the camera that I bounced off it every time I've watched the movie. The part of the conclusion that lands for me is his reunion with Vanessa in the afterlife and how she tells him it's not his time. The heartbreak that Reynolds feels in that moment echoes the heartbreak he feels in her death at the start. And then the realization that he has somehow found a family and has to go back to be with them. I found it very moving and very emotional in the way that the I'm not actually dead bit was just a bit.
It was genuinely interesting for me because he connected with each of the other characters absolutely perfectly. It was what each one of those characters needed to hear in that moment from him. And it was an honesty in Wade and a truthfulness that we hadn't seen from him. Instead of tearing his friends down, giving them what they needed in that moment. He calls out teenage Negasonic Warhead and she expects an attack and he does an attack. And you just see her stunned and interspersing that with Cable, you need to judge people not for the color of their skin. And it's just absolute loathing, derision. So, do we even want to talk about these end credits? It does the entire movie, but on the other hand, it brings Vanessa back. So I'm like, okay, sure.
The fact that Negasonic Warhead and Yukio can somehow repair a time machine from the future so Wade can use it multiple times, whereas the inventors of the time machine in the future could only charge it twice, was funny. It's a very comic book thing to do. Saving Vanessa, I am so glad that as a character, she's not lost to us in Deadpool and Wolverine or any future project involving these characters.
Definitely having really grown an appreciation for these Deadpool movies, having done these analyses, having gone through Deadpool and Wolverine, being able to retrospectively look at Wade and just understand where he is now.
This process of going back and picking the best scene and thinking about why it's the best and why it works so well may have begun with flipping my opinion on Deadpool 1 and 2.
Oh, really? You think Deadpool 1 might be better than Deadpool 2?
I think the best scenes in Deadpool 1 are all better than the best scenes in Deadpool 2.
I think this is my first win on the board where I will come to the party with an opinion on something and Scott has his opinion and Scott always manages to change my opinion. Always. I think this is the first time where I'm like, I think Deadpool 1 is better than Deadpool 2. I just think the density of the storytelling in Deadpool 1 is shocking. Absolutely shocking. That is a movie that you can see. It's like a band that has their first album. They've spent 20 years thinking up this first album. That's what Deadpool 1 is, because they've been in development hell for so long. Ryan Reynolds and the team had so many ideas and they just poured that out. I just love Deadpool 1.
But then Deadpool 2 partially works because it doesn't have to do that hard work. Deadpool 1 had to do all of the hard work to establish things, and then Deadpool 2 gets to relax with the characters and play around the edges a bit and has strengths available to it that the first one didn't. But could never have got there if the first one wasn't such an achievement. I think you're correct. This discussion has highlighted not only that Deadpool 1 may actually genuinely be perhaps a little bit better than Deadpool 2, but the utter importance of that dating calendar girl scene in the first one. It's the through line for the entire trilogy. Yeah, there are so many scenes that don't quite work in Deadpool 2 compared to Deadpool 1. There are no scenes in Deadpool 2 that get to the heights that Deadpool 1 get to. As much fun as I have with the sequel, I continue to have fun every time I watch it. I think I have to do the right thing and say, no, Deadpool 2 crawled, so because Deadpool 1 flew.
Yeah, it really, yay, I feel vindicated.
It had to happen eventually. Just the law of averages statistically. You've reminded me that there was a strip club scene in Deadpool 1. Can I go back and add a late nomination?
For best scene, it is a good Stan Lee cameo. He still regrets that he was green screened in. That's it. That's Deadpool 2. We have finished the road to Deadpool Wolverine. I am shocked. And we did it in more than just a George W. Bush sort of way. I think we actually did it. It has been a long time. Scott, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this road to Deadpool Wolverine. It's been really fun, man. I've had an absolute blast. I look forward to it every week. I do not look forward to editing it, but these conversations are always fun. That, I want to thank everybody out there for watching, and I've just got some final words for you. Woodpecker, gingivitis, codswallop. Good night, everybody. How do you hang out with your friends? Restaurants, bars, clubs, maybe over at someone's house just staring at a TV screen or just sort of hanging out. And if you sit around watching a movie, that's cool, but you're not really talking. I still, hand on my heart, believe that the best way to hang out with your friends is to play a role-playing game. Unlike a board game, role-playing games are not competitive. They are cooperative. You and your friends actually hanging out and creating stories and moments you look back on and laugh at together. But the worst thing about role-playing games is getting started. There's a lot of rules, and being the Games Master takes a heck of a lot of preparation time each week. Enter GameMastersForHire.com. If you've always wanted to play Dungeons & Dragons, GameMastersForHire.com are experts at teaching you all the rules while taking you on an epic adventure. And if you're loving it, you can play the same character every session, who will then get more and more powerful. If you're a wannabe dungeon or game master, there's no faster way to learn and be great at it than booking a training session with GameMastersForHire.com. For the experienced D&D groups out there, if you're looking for a special birthday gift for your DM, the best gift you can give is to let them be a player for a change by booking a birthday adventure. GameMastersForHire.com will make sure the guest of honor is treated like a hero on their special day. Game Masters for Hire can also run games for anyone, from dinner parties to kids' parties, corporate events, bachelor or bachelorette nights, to ongoing campaigns every week where you play the same character every session. It's like a story that you're building with your friends. GameMastersForHire.com are available online, which is how I play with them. But if you live in the greater Los Angeles area, they can do in-person games with miniatures and sets that'll blow your mind. Please visit GameMastersForHire.com for more information. Reach out to Ollie and his team, and they'll help you out, whatever you need. And just like going out to dinner, split the cost between the lot of you. I'll even kick in. Just use my offer code Badower for 10% off your first game. I promise you're going to have an amazing time that you'll always remember. Thank you, GameMastersForHire.com, for sponsoring this video. My daughter was like, I wish there was more Deadpool Wolverine movies. And I was like, there is actually another movie with Deadpool and Wolverine in it. And then I was like, oh my God, my mouth is working before my brain managed to catch up. And the next thing you know, I'm watching Wolverine Origins.